High above the blue and green sphere that humans called Earth, the Intergalactic Accord Council was in session. The vast, star-strewn chamber glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light, its walls lined with representatives of hundreds of different species, each with their own unique features and technologies. The air buzzed with low murmurs as the council members debated the fate of a species they considered primitive humans. For centuries, Earth had been watched, its history marked by war, pollution, and chaotic development. To the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, humanity was nothing more than a barely evolved species trapped in a cycle of self-destruction. They lacked the grace of the Tellurians, the intellect of the Vorians, and the spiritual harmony of the Kasari. What could they offer the greater galaxy? Nothing, they agreed. Nothing but trouble. Captain Ray, a stoic and calculating Zenithar, stood at the forefront of the meeting, a being whose race had lived for thousands of years. His eyes, like molten metal, scanned the holographic display showing Earth's recent history wars, environmental collapse, and chaotic political shifts. This species, Earthlings, are far too reckless to be part of our community, he said coldly, his deep voice echoing across the chamber. Their potential is negligible. They are not worthy of our attention. Let them fend for themselves. The other species in the room nodded in agreement, some with disdain, others with indifference. To them, humans were a curiosity at best, one that was better left untouched. The Council, a collection of the galaxy's most ancient and powerful civilizations, had already made its decision. Earth would be excluded from any formal alliance or protection. Earth was a forgotten world. But as Captain Rai prepared to sign the decree that would seal humanity's fate, a strange phenomenon occurred. The very air in the chamber seemed to hum with a sudden surge of energy. A quiet ripple passed through the room as every species present turned their attention toward the star maps hovering in front of them. Something was wrong, something beyond the natural order. A violent, unpredictable energy spike appeared on the outer rim of the galaxy, followed by a strange anomaly in the vastness of space. It flickered across the visual display, a distortion that rippled through the very fabric of the space-time continuum. The anomaly expanded, growing at an alarming rate, threatening to destabilize entire sectors of the galaxy. For a moment, the chamber fell into silence as every council member tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The phenomenon was unprecedented. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered, and the truth was, none of them knew what to do. This cannot be, muttered Sasher, the ancient Vorian ambassador. His voice, usually calm and measured, trembled with disbelief. This anomaly, it's moving toward us, toward Earth. Rai frowned. He turned to his second-in-command, his sharp mind racing. Set course for the anomaly, he ordered, his voice low but filled with tension. The Zenithar fleet, the most technologically advanced force in the galaxy, prepared for an emergency jump. But something else was strange. The anomaly wasn't just a cosmic event, it was pulling energy in strange ways, as if it were alive, constantly shifting and changing. The normal subspace jump lanes that had existed for eons were no longer functioning. The stars themselves seemed to distort as the anomaly spread. In the depths of the council chamber, a quiet murmur grew louder. It was not just the anomaly itself that was causing panic, but the realization that Earth, that small, insignificant planet that had been labeled worthless by the galaxy, was now at the center of this catastrophe. And the galaxy's most powerful civilizations could do nothing to stop it. Outside the council, in the quiet streets of Shanghai, Dr. Maya Chen sat hunched over her holographic workstation. She'd been studying energy fluctuations from solar storms for years, but nothing had prepared her for what was unfolding in front of her. The anomaly, she recognized it immediately as an unstable quantum anomaly, was threatening the entire solar system. But there was something else. She could feel it in her bones. This wasn't just some random cosmic event. This was something deliberate, something that could be controlled. Her phone buzzed. It was a call from the World Science Coalition. As she answered, her eyes locked onto the data streaming across her screen. The other scientists on the line were just as perplexed, but one thing was clear: this phenomenon had to be contained, or else the entire galaxy would be in danger. There's only one way we can stop this, Maya said, her voice steady despite the pressure. We need to build a counterforce, something that can reverse the anomaly's energy signature. And we need to do it fast. The world, in a rare moment of unity, came together. The leaders of every nation set aside their differences. Scientists, engineers, and military experts began collaborating in ways they never had before. Humanity's response was swift, determined, and bold. They had no choice. The galaxy had dismissed them, but now they were going to be the only ones who could fix the situation. Back on the Zenithar cruiser Velatrix, Captain Rye and his officers watched helplessly as their best technology failed to stabilize the anomaly. The ships around Earth were being pulled closer, their navigation systems failing one by one. The Zenithar fleet was powerless. They were stuck. And as Ray watched the data from Earth flicker across the screen, he felt something he had never expected, a flicker of respect. Humanity, with their crude tools and their chaotic emotional nature, had done something the greatest minds of the galaxy had failed to do. They had figured out what was happening and they were acting. We cannot ignore them anymore, Rai said slowly, his voice almost a whisper. Prepare for landing. We need to learn from them. As the Zenithar fleet began its descent toward Earth, Captain Rai couldn't help but feel a pang of disbelief. How had this worthless species managed to do what even the most advanced civilizations could not? The answer, he realized, might just change everything. The humans, who had been written off as nothing more than an unpredictable and chaotic race, were now the galaxy's last hope. And as Ray's ship entered Earth's atmosphere, he knew this would be a pivotal moment in the history of the universe. The sky above Earth was not the peaceful blue that it used to be. Now, it was filled with streaks of strange energy colors that no one had ever seen before, twisting and writhing through the atmosphere like something alive. As the Zenithar fleet descended toward the planet, their advanced sensors picked up something strange. Humans were not panicking. They were preparing. While the greatest civilizations of the galaxy scrambled for a solution to the anomaly, the people of Earth were working together in quiet determination. Their machines might have been primitive compared to the Zenithars, but their creativity was their strength. There was a feeling in the air, something that Captain Ray could not ignore. Despite their lack of technology, humans had an edge. Something other species lacked: sheer willpower. Dr. Maya Chen, the physicist who had seen the anomaly's potential for destruction, stood at the front of a massive crowd gathered outside a makeshift command center. The streets around her were filled with people, some with hands on their hips, others staring at the sky in quiet disbelief. But there was no panic, no chaos. Instead, the humans were working together in ways that amazed even the highest-ranking leaders of the planet. Every country, every government, every scientist, engineer, and soldier had come together without hesitation, united by the common goal of survival. Maya had led the team that developed the idea to stabilize the anomaly using Earth's own technology. The concept was radical, but she believed in it, and the rest of the world believed in her. They had no choice. If they did nothing, the anomaly would tear apart the fabric of space itself, devouring everything in its path. The Zenithar, with all their superior technology, were helpless. Their ships were caught in the gravitational pull of the anomaly, unable to break free. The Vorian, the Kasari, even the mighty Tellurans, they were all stuck. They could only watch as the event unfolded, their hands tied by their own limits. But Earth was different. The humans had no advanced space drives or quantum shields. Their strongest ships could barely travel beyond their own moon. Yet, they had something far more valuable: adaptability. And the most incredible part was how quickly they had managed to develop a plan that the aliens had failed to see. Maya stood in front of the massive display boards where scientists from around the world were working tirelessly. One of the screens flashed, showing a prototype device that was being rapidly assembled by engineers in multiple locations. The pulse generator, as it was called, was a device designed to emit a controlled energy wave that would counteract the unstable frequencies of the anomaly. It wasn't perfect, nothing was on Earth, but it was humanity's best shot. "This is our only chance," Maya said, her voice unwavering as she spoke to the assembled team. "If we fail, we all fail. But if we succeed, We'll show the galaxy that humanity isn't just a weak, chaotic species. We're something more. We're survivors. The engineers worked in silence, their faces set with determination. They had no time to waste. If the device wasn't ready in time, the consequences would be catastrophic. As the device neared completion, a messenger ran up to Maya, breathless. He handed her a communication tablet, and she quickly scanned the incoming message. It was from the Zenithar fleet, and it was clear Captain Ray had requested a meeting. They needed the humans' help. Maya raised an eyebrow. The Zenithar want our help? How ironic. She looked up at the sky, at the flashing lights and the energy swirling above. Humanity had never been part of the galactic community, had never been considered worthy of the Council's attention. Now, they had no choice but to look to Earth. The humans were the last hope. As Maya approached the meeting point, the Zenithar officers stood by their ship, looking out of place on Earth's surface. They were elegant, their sleek, metallic bodies gleaming under the harsh sunlight. Captain Ray was among them, standing tall, his eyes scanning the horizon. When he saw Maya, he didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked at her with something that almost resembled respect. "Maya Chen," Captain Rai said, his voice deep and steady. "I must admit, I underestimated you." Maya nodded, her gaze never leaving him. "You and your kind have underestimated us for a long time." Rai studied her for a moment, considering her words. "The anomaly is unlike anything we've seen before. We have tried everything in our power to stabilize it, but we are ineffective." He paused. "We need your help. Your device." Maya's lips twitched in a thin smile. It was strange to hear an alien admit they were helpless. She had expected resistance, defiance. But instead, she saw something new: fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of something they couldn't control. "You think we can do what you can't?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. Ray's expression softened slightly. "It seems we were wrong. We judged you too quickly. Perhaps we can learn from each other." Maya turned to look at the device that was now being wheeled into place. The pulse generator was just about ready, but it had one flaw. It needed power, huge amounts of power, something that Earth's grid couldn't supply on its own. They needed the Zenithar ships to power it, to give it the energy boost it needed to send a wave strong enough to counteract the anomaly's effect. "I think you'll find it's not just technology that will save us," Maya said, turning back to the alien captain. "It's the fact that humans are willing to do anything to survive. You'll see that soon enough." Captain Ray was silent for a long time, then nodded. "You are correct, and we will do what is necessary." With the agreement made, the humans and Zenithar worked together. The ships provided the necessary energy, feeding the pulse generator as it powered up. Maya stood beside Rai, watching the machine as it hummed to life, glowing with a brilliant light. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience. Against all odds, Earth was about to prove its worth. As the countdown to activation began, a sudden shockwave rocked the ground. The anomaly was intensifying. Time was running out. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the device's readout. They couldn't afford a mistake. If this didn't work, Earth would be destroyed, and with it. The final seconds ticked away, and with a deep breath, Maya pressed the button to activate the pulse generator. A bright, blinding light shot up from the device, cutting through the atmosphere, piercing the very heart of the anomaly. For a moment, the entire world held its breath. Then, as if answering the call, the anomaly began to stabilize. The twisting energy above the planet calmed, the erratic pulses fading into a peaceful hum. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time since the disaster began, there was hope. Maya turned to Rai. "We did it. We saved the galaxy." Ray's face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of something he hadn't felt before: admiration. "You have," he said, his voice softer than usual. "You have shown us what it truly means to survive." And with that, the humans had done what the galaxy's most powerful civilizations could not. They had proven their worth, not with technology or brute strength, but with the one thing that set them apart: Their unbreakable will to survive. As the light from the pulse generator faded, and the sky slowly returned to its natural blue hue, silence fell over the Earth. The anomaly, which had been tearing across the galaxy like a storm without mercy, had finally begun to weaken, thanks to the desperate effort of a species once thought to be too primitive to matter. But this moment of calm was not the end, it was only the beginning of something far more uncertain. Dr. Maya Chen stood beside the massive generator, her heart still pounding from the tension. The energy pulse had worked, yes, but only barely. The core of the anomaly was still active, a swirling mass of unstable quantum matter hovering in the far edge of the solar system, out of reach but still dangerously alive. Across the Zenithar flagship and other council ships stationed nearby, reports were coming in fast. Temporary stabilization had been achieved, but if they didn't act fast, the anomaly would begin rebuilding itself, stronger than before. Maya knew this wasn't over, and more importantly, she knew they couldn't rely on standard science anymore. They had to build something new, something no one in the galaxy had ever tried. The problem was, they had no time, no resources, and no luxury of trial and error. It was in this moment of chaos that the true miracle began, not the kind written in ancient texts or born from divine power, but the kind created by sheer human determination. Back in the underground command center, the room buzzed with engineers and scientists, many running on no sleep and fueled only by fear and urgency. Satellite feeds showed unusual fluctuations around the anomaly's core, and according to Earth's top minds, they had maybe 72 hours before it erupted again. This time, the damage would be irreversible. As Maya looked at the data streaming in, an idea began forming, not one rooted in logic, but in possibility. What if they could trap the anomaly? Not destroy it, but contain it long enough for its unstable energy to decay safely? That was the only realistic shot they had left. She scribbled her thoughts on a tablet, diagrams and formulas pouring out faster than she could process them. The design was insane, a massive energy net powered by synchronized nuclear detonations across Earth's orbit, guided by both human technology and borrowed alien energy cores. The plan was dangerous, risky, and sounded impossible to everyone who heard it, but it was the only thing that made sense. The other council races scoffed at the idea. The Tellurans refused to offer assistance, calling it a desperate act of a desperate species. The Vorians declared it too unstable to even consider. But the Zenithar, after what they had seen humans achieve, chose not to ignore Maya this time. Captain Ray stood before his command crew with a sharpness in his eyes. He had been silent during the debate, but now raised his voice with firm command. "They have earned our attention," he said. "Perhaps they are not perfect, but they are bold, and sometimes boldness is what the universe needs." With reluctant agreement from his officers, Ray sent a directive. Zenithar energy cores would be delivered to Earth to assist with the construction of the containment net. In the following hours, a miracle began to take shape across deserts, oceans, and cities. Spaceports once used for launching satellites now became makeshift factories. Human cargo ships were stripped of their old parts and reassembled with alien reactors. Old satellites were retrofitted with explosive cores and guided stabilizers. What was once scrap metal became part of humanity's last hope. Even children and the elderly joined in whatever way they could, some transporting supplies, others delivering food to the sleepless scientists. The world, for the first time in its long and divided history, moved as one. From the orbiting Zenithar fleet, Ray watched in awe as hundreds of human craft lifted off the planet, their movements clumsy but full of intent. The containment net was beginning to form, stretching like an invisible web toward the anomaly's edge. It was a sight the Council had never imagined. Earth, once considered backward, now leading the charge in a galactic crisis. But the danger was far from over. As the final phase of the plan neared, a new problem emerged. A strange surge was detected from within the anomaly, something alive. Not just energy, but a presence. It had no voice, no body, but the Council's sensors all confirmed the same terrifying truth. The anomaly was intelligent. Or worse, it was being controlled. Whether it was a weapon gone wrong or an ancient force awakened, no one knew, but now it was responding, pushing against the net with growing violence. Lights flickered across control stations, engines failed mid-flight, and communication between satellites dropped one by one. The containment net was under attack not by ships or weapons, but by the anomaly itself. Earth's system began failing rapidly, and the energy field started to collapse. Panic started to rise again, but Maya refused to give in. She rushed to the main station, fingers flying over the console, rerouting power, restarting failed links manually. Her voice, calm and fierce, echoed through the comm system. We hold the line. We don't break. Around her, others followed suit, rebooting systems, rerouting wires with bare hands, using anything they could find to keep the net alive. It was messy, chaotic, and not at all how the galaxy was used to operating, but it was working. The net was holding, barely. Down to their last battery packs, humans began sacrificing their own ships, using the force of their explosions to stabilize the outer nodes of the net. The sky was lit with flashes as entire crews made the ultimate choice, giving up their lives so the plan would not fail. Watching from above, Ray could barely comprehend it. These beings, who had no place in the great halls of the galaxy, were now standing where Titans once fell. Sacrifice was not a weakness. It was their strength. With the final synchronization achieved, Maya activated the last failsafe. The net pulsed, its energy folding in on itself, trapping the anomaly's core in a frozen prism of light. The entire sky lit up, as if a second sun had been born. Then silence. All systems went dark. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, one by one, readings began to return. The anomaly was contained. Its energy levels were dropping. It would no longer threaten the galaxy. Earth, against every prediction and doubt, had achieved the impossible. The containment net held like a miracle stitched from madness, and when the last pulse from the anomaly flickered and vanished, a strange silence fell across the universe, a silence not of fear, but of awe. For a few long minutes, every starship, station, and settlement that had been tracking Earth's desperate attempt stood still. The anomaly that once threatened to consume space-time had been neutralized, and the source of salvation had come not from the mighty civilizations of the galaxy, but from the one species they had all dismissed. Humanity, once seen as too emotional, too fragmented, and too primitive to be taken seriously, had just performed the impossible. The Galactic Council, seated on the crystalline moon of Daraxis Prime, received the transmission with stunned expression. None of their predictions, simulations, or artificial intelligences had even considered Earth's success to be likely. In fact, according to their cold numbers, the humans should have failed within the first 10 hours. Yet here they were still standing, bruised but unbroken, having saved the very people who never considered them equals. Across hundreds of worlds, news networks scrambled to report the event, but even the most skilled reporters struggled to find the words. Entire populations of advanced species turned their attention to Earth, watching the replay footage in disbelief as grainy images showed human engineers clashing tools together, soldiers manually launching satellite boosters, and civilians working hand in hand with alien crews under a shared sky. What shocked them the most was not the technology, but the effort this unstoppable wave of human cooperation, courage, and sheer defiance in the face of extinction. Captain Ray stood aboard his ship, silent, his hands behind his back as he stared out at Earth's surface. Below, the planet looked peaceful, almost untouched, but he knew better. He had walked among their ruins, seen their cities nearly collapse, and witnessed their people die to keep the containment net intact. He had never believed in the concept of lesser species. He considered such ideas political nonsense, but even he had not expected this level of sacrifice. The humans didn't win because of superior machines. They won because they refused to accept loss. While others calculated retreat, they built miracles with scraps. The Council had no choice but to respond, and so, in an emergency session watched by more species than ever before, they gathered to discuss Earth's role in the galaxy. The first speaker, a high-ranking Telluran elder, cleared his throat and admitted, "We have misjudged them." Gasps rippled across the chamber. The Tellurans had never once admitted failure, not in centuries. The Vorian delegate stood next, tall and cold as always, but this time without her usual pride. They created an outcome none of our kind could foresee. This is not luck. This is evolution. And slowly, one by one, the galaxy's elite began to accept the truth that had stood in front of them the whole time. Humanity was not behind. They were different. And that difference had saved them all. Back on Earth, things were less political and more personal. Maya Chen stood in the field outside the pulse generator, watching the wreckage being cleared. Survivors hugged, cried, and tried to laugh through their exhaustion. Some of the human pilots who had launched into orbit were never coming back, and memorials had already started forming near the command centers, with names being added every hour. Even with victory, the cost had been high, and Maya carried the weight of each sacrifice with her. Still, there was pride in her chest, a deep warmth that even sorrow couldn't dim. She had looked the galaxy's end in the eye and refused to blink. A soft hum interrupted her thoughts as a Zenithar craft landed nearby. Captain Rai stepped out, walking toward her with something in his hands. It was a small crystal, glowing faintly, the symbol of the Zenithar Order of Honor, an award given only to those who achieved greatness under impossible conditions. "You should have this," he said quietly, placing it in her hand. "It's not enough to repay what your people have done. But it's a start." Maya looked at the crystal, then up at the alien captain. "We didn't do it for awards. We did it because there was no one else coming." And that single sentence spread faster than any speech. Across galactic networks, the recording of Maya's words was shared by millions, then billions, until even children on distant planets whispered it during their games. We did it because there was no one else coming. It became a symbol of Earth's spirit, flawed, stubborn, emotional, but utterly unshakable. The Council, pressured by both public outcry and undeniable reality, voted to officially recognize humanity as a core member of the Galactic Alliance. But more than that, they sent envoys not as rulers or instructors, but as students. Human universities received alien scholars, and Earth's engineers were invited to co-develop hybrid technologies that blended creativity with precision. The balance had shifted, and while Earth still had much to learn, they had proven that their voice mattered. Meanwhile, a hidden debate began among a small circle of galactic thinkers. If humanity could overcome a cosmic-level threat with limited means, what would they become when given full access to galactic knowledge? Would they be guardians or something far more unpredictable? But for now, the people of Earth celebrated. Not just their survival, but their recognition. For the first time, they stood not in the shadow of superior empires, but beside them. In the quiet of a rebuilt lab, Maya stared up at the stars through the observatory dome. Somewhere out there, new threats waited. The galaxy was still a dangerous, wild place. But now, she knew Earth would never face it alone again, not because they needed saving, but because the universe had finally realized something very important. Underestimating humanity was the worst mistake it could make. In the weeks after the anomaly was contained and Earth's name echoed. Through every galactic channel, something began to shift not only among the stars, but also deep within the hearts of humans themselves. The planet that once looked up at the sky and wondered if anyone was out there was now the center of interstellar attention, a world that had been feared lost, but had instead found a voice powerful enough to awaken respect in even the most distant corners of the galaxy. In high orbit above Earth, new stations were being constructed, not just by humans, but alongside Zenithar engineers, Vorian architects, and other species that once looked down upon Earth's capabilities. The old divisions between advanced and primitive began to blur. And it wasn't because humanity had become perfect, it was because they had proven they could act with courage, unity, and an imagination that defied the rules of the known universe. Maya Chen stood once again in front of the Galactic Council, this time not as a desperate voice trying to convince them to act, but as a guest of honor. Her image was displayed across thousands of worlds, and her message was simple yet bold: Earth was ready to join the stars. Not as passengers, but as partners. That moment became known as the Earth Declaration. But even as the Council signed its approval and the galaxy officially welcomed humanity into its circle, there were whispers of what came next. Because while the anomaly had been stopped, Its remnants remained scattered across space, drifting like forgotten pieces of a puzzle, too ancient to understand. What if it had been a test, or worse, a warning? Still, Earth did not wait in fear. Instead, it built forward. Entire nations repurposed military budgets for space research. Students studied alien languages alongside physics, and astronauts trained side by side with alien crews. The first joint exploration fleet was announced, led by both human and alien command, and named the Horizon Initiative. It was not just a mission into unknown space, it was a symbol of shared destiny. At the heart of this new fleet stood the UNS Endeavour, a massive ship forged from both Terran steel and Zenithar crystal alloys, equipped with both war readiness and scientific instruments that could map the quantum fabric of space itself. Maya was named as the ship's first human ambassador, while Captain Rai would serve as joint commander, a sign that old distrust could be turned into alliance. As they prepared to launch on their first deep space voyage beyond known borders, people from all over Earth watched with pride, knowing they were no longer isolated in their blue cradle. Children born after the event would grow up never knowing a time when aliens were myths or when humanity doubted its place among the stars. But even as the ship left Earth's atmosphere and crossed into deep space, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this new peace was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond their charts, beyond the reach of even the most advanced probes, something else watched. Not with malice or fear, but with interest because it had seen what humans were capable of. The anomaly, it turned out, had been artificial, seeded long ago by a long-lost species seeking to test the next intelligent race to rise. Most had failed. Most had crumbled. But Earth had survived. That meant something. And now, doors long closed might begin to open. On board the Endeavour, Maya stood on the observation deck, watching stars pass like sparks across the dark. Ray approached her, handing her a data slate containing the latest scans. The anomaly remnants were shifting again, but not in danger. They were forming a pattern. A map. An invitation? Rai asked. Maya stared at the data, her mind racing with possibilities. Or a challenge, she replied. And in that moment, both of them understood the universe had just taken its first true look at humanity. And it wasn't finished with them yet. But neither was Earth finished with it. Not even close.